I hear so many people give speeches. Oh, I've sacrificed so much. No, you didn't. You made choices. And those choices were good choices.
Yeah.
It wasn't sacrifice if you designed the game and lived in accordance and were congruent. And I think that so many people think to be wealthy, you have to sacrifice.
Whatever has been put on you is not your sentence. That you were created to heal, you were created to thrive, but it requires you to choose something different.
Only 34% of millionaires feel wealthy today. They have this money locked away for one day, someday, that they'll probably spend in the hospital.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the Own It Show. I'm your host, Justin Rothlinghofer. And if you're new to the Own It Show, again, I just want to welcome you. Welcome you to a place where we help you, encourage you, educate you, equip you, empower you, whatever E word you want to use, to ultimately take ownership of your health and live differently, because we know that there's unlocks that happen when you choose something different. And if we can guide you on the best place to go, that is when you can take the best action possible. And so, again, my name's Justin Rothlinghofer. So pleased to have you here. And I'm excited for where we're going today. And if you've checked out any of our previous 350 episodes, the only thing I ever ask is that if something resonates, if something truly speaks to you in this moment, that you would like it, you would subscribe, or you would share it with somebody you love, because it is going to help change their life as much as it does yours. Today is a special day because we have a in-person guest. And you guys know I've been talking about it for a while with the Health Haven project we've got going on, and a lot of the show that we're going to start in about 8 weeks, where we're going to start taking people through the experiential piece of what does it really look like to live different and bring you all into the journey. I think today is going to be a message and a story, and really just a time in which is going to speak to you. Because when I sit back and I think about, okay, what makes a life? I think there's 4 big things. I think there's faith, I think there's family, I think there's health, and I think there's finances. And I think when you look at all 4 of these things encompassed together, there's an integration of them. There's a interwoven connectivity that there needs to be a focus. And now there's different seasons for different times in which you have to prioritize certain things in terms of where things go, the focus on them, and how we start to position them to ultimately see the fruit. But the guy I have on today is an expert in all of these interwoven interconnectivity pieces. And he's got a story that goes with it that I think is going to resonate with each and every one of you. And so, Garrett, it is so great to have you. I'm just honored that you would come and join us, and honored that you would fly here, because I know you're on vacation a little bit with your wife.
It's my 23rd anniversary
There
today.
you go, 23rd anniversary.
We celebrated it last night. We'll do a little bit more today.
Congratulations. So awesome. So awesome. I just love it. You went from Utah to New York, over the course of the weekend?
Friday, and then then got here this morning.
That's so good. It's so good. What's your plan for while you're in Miami?
We're going to take it kind of easy. We're going to hit some good restaurants, and my wife wants to do a little bit of shopping. We're going to walk the beach. We're just going to, do the spa.
That's great.
Really pretty laid back.
That's awesome. Yeah. Just connect and have some fun.
Yep.
I love it. Well, that's so good. And guys, if you haven't heard of Garrett Gunderson before, Garrett is a disruptor. That is the biggest word that we can put into this. If you haven't heard him speak, if you haven't been exposed to any of his workshops or his talks, they are an event. He's an artist, if you will, in how he displays his knowledge and how he gets that across. We're going to dive into that a little bit today. But ultimately, his book, Killing Sacred Cows, is where I got initially connected to him, not as a person, but as an idea, as a concept, as a philosophy. And it really changed the way I thought. It was really empowering. And so I wanted to bring him on and share him with you. And so not only is he a business owner, not only is he a family man, not only is he a disruptor, not only is he a New York Times bestselling author, but he is somebody who serves entrepreneurs, executives, exactly who you are listening to this. And so, Garrett, again, thank you for coming here, and just honored that you spent some time with me.
It's, when we were in New York, we had some time just to walk around and talk, and my wife and I we have a 17-year-old and a 20-year-old. And so we decided that once a quarter, we're going to take him somewhere. Like maybe we're just going to drive to Jackson from Salt Lake, or maybe we're going to fly to Southern California and just do these little retreats. Because what I find is if I can travel with them a little bit, they'll start asking the questions versus me just telling them things.
Yeah.
Like the other day, my son was doing homework with two of his friends around the table. It was like my bedtime pretty much, 9:30, you know, and I walk out, but then they start asking questions. I stayed up for a couple hours, and it was really magical because they're asking me stuff. And even, you know, his friends know I wrote these books and have read part of it, even though my son hasn't, this 17-year-old. And I think that, you know, wealth is kind of like what we do together as a family.
Yep.
You know, and it's like being able to be present and being able to enjoy the moments. And most of the things people are taught about wealth are kind of like someday, and it's all about like reducing and minimizing instead of maximizing. And I think that harms people's health because sometimes they, you know, think about they don't invest enough in themselves and their health and everything that would help them get there. It gets them to like create really bad habits of thinking that life will be better eventually, and so they really grind to the point where they miss out on such meaningful moments.
Yeah. I mean, I know that so many times in my life and things that I've experienced. And having just kind of gone through a little bit of your background, I'd love you just to kind of share with our audience kind of where this mind shift came for you, like what this process was for you. I know I've got a couple moments specifically I want to talk to you about that kind of shaped this for you. But when we think of the word abundance versus scarcity,
Mm-hmm.
what are your definitions of abundance versus scarcity, and how did you start to create those definitions based upon your life experience?
Scarcity is like this feeling of lack, fear, doubt, worry. People in scarcity usually see like profit as evidence of deception and coercion. People in scarcity think they've got to take what they can. It's all very competitive, that there's never enough, and that the world's like a finite pie. They don't think of it as expansive. So,
Yep.
where abundance, they think about innovation, ingenuity. I call it the producer paradigm, where they look to create more value in the world than they take from it. And it's a place of collaboration and connection. And I kind of grew up where I think the scarcity came from like, you know, my great grandfather, for example. He was in southern Italy and his wife gets pregnant, and then he's like, wait, I'm not able to provide. And so he ends up coming across the sea, leaving her behind because he couldn't afford to get both of them there and didn't have enough nutrition because they were living off honey bread on the boat. And then he gets on a train to get to a little town called Sunnyside, Utah, where he was wanted to be a coal miner, but there's a major coal mining disaster in 1913. So he ends up becoming a goat herd, living in a tent in Utah, which gets pretty cold. It takes him 7 years to get enough money to get a house and bring his family over. So he meets his daughter for the first time at 7 years old. And so I was
Wow.
thinking, if I don't have enough money, I could lose my family. And that like permeates into his kids and within the family. So they're very miserly, like save every single dollar, always afraid of not having enough, put cash in coffee cans, put it in the cellar, like apply for welfare, but have $500,000 in a bank account that they've never spent. You'd never know they have this kind of money because they're in a $20,000 home. So that's kind of what I was dealing with growing up, is beyond frugality. It was more fear.
What, growing up in that, did you recognize it as normal?
I thought it was just normal. I thought that was, you know, like I saved a lot of money. I had a business when I was 15 years old. I didn't want to spend any of that money. It was all about building that savings account and reducing expenses. And so that's what I'd learned. That's what I'd seen with my family. That's all I kind of knew until wasn't until I was married and I met this woman, Nancy, who was at this event, and she was working as part of the financial team for Robert Kiyosaki. And I recognized her name, so I went up and talked to her. And she's like, hey, I'm excited for you in this journey when you get to the next level because you're going to see that people view money differently. I was like, well, what do you mean? So she asked me some questions. And I remember some of my answers were like, well, when we have this amount of money, then we can consider having kids. And when we have this amount of money, then we can move out of this crappy apartment. And I mean, I was making six figures at the time, which back then was actually some amount of money. And she just said, I wonder what it's like living in the financial prison you built for your wife.
Wow.
And I was like, I recognized that moment I was an asshole. I was like, oh, wait. It was emotional, and I called my wife. I was in Vegas. I was like, I just apologized to her. And we ended up buying a home shortly after. And it wasn't even that expensive of a home compared to what I was making, but everything changed because I just started to think like so much more about value creation and adding value, and so much less about like just conservation and reduction, because that's a very finite game.
Yep.
But that's all I'd ever seen.
Yep.
You know, my dad was a coal miner. And so coal mines go on strike. There's no income that comes in, right? And so my family's like, eating saltine crackers to live for a while. And I remember hearing my parents talk about paying the bills and those kind of things. So it was like money felt stressful and scarce.
When we think about scarcity and abundance, and the definitions are great. Like I love the concept of like this scarcity mindset being a space of taking, being a space of conserving, being a space of never having enough, and it creates
It's selfish.
Not only is it selfish, but it creates a massive stress load on your body. And as we talk about here at the Own It Show, is a lot of like your body keeps the score.
Yes, it
And
does.
when we look at the stress, and we've talked a lot about heart rate variability, we've talked a lot about how that's the language of our body that's communicating how our lifestyle, our habits, our behaviors are all communicating to us how we're handling it. We actually don't realize that our mindset and the way we're thinking and living in a scarcity based mindset actually behind the scenes creates a massive overload for the operating system
Yeah.
of how our body's functioning.
I knew, I thought I knew that. And then in 2023, I go through a lot of stress because I sold a business in 21, but I had a licensing deal with them and I didn't like how it was going. I didn't like the direction they were heading. I didn't feel like it aligned with my brand or my values. And I was also in this other partnership where it was really gnarly and it wasn't working out with a close friend. And I was doing a book tour at the time and I was speaking 1 to 2 times a week. And then I was sitting down with 2 other speakers getting a vitamin IV. And when they took my blood pressure, it was 192.
Wow.
And she was like, "Oh, there must be something wrong with the machine." And I was like, "No, that's me. It's definitely." I felt tired for the first time on stage that day. So it's like, I've got to look at it. And my family, I mean, my grandfather had polycystic kidney disease. My mom had polycystic kidney disease, 2 of her sisters. And I have cysts. So I was basically in stage 4 kidney failure at the end of 2023.
Wow.
I went and got blood work. It was gnarly. I remember showing it to my buddy who's a doctor, and he was just like scared. I could see the look on his face, and I was like, all right, that's the impact of stress.
Yeah.
Like, and I could feel like going for the end of that tour, like, as a speaker, they give me these big baskets of junk food. And I would normally, when I was hitting it for the dopamine and the sugar spikes and all that. But that was like a wake up call. It's like, wait, all this stress is impacting me. All this, like, trying to appease everyone and sacrifice and take on the burden by not just telling them how I feel and, trying to be a good person, but at the same time, a bad leader by doing that. And it truly was impacting my health. Now, end of the story today is like, I'm in great health, but I had to do some major life changes to get there.
I want to come back to that in a second, because as we go back to like the definition of scarcity, but then also the definition of abundance, I was going to say it's not just in finances that shows up. It ends up being a lifestyle that we live.
Relationships, people that won't give over their whole self to their partner because they're afraid they might get hurt and they reserve something. That's scarcity.
Yep.
Right. Or just, we see it in health, people not investing in themselves.
Yep.
Right.
Where did growing up in that scarcity-based mindset, what patterns did you start to recognize now looking backwards that it started to show up in? Let's take 3 pillars, for example. Let's take your health, let's take your relationships, and let's take your career. Let's take those 3 things. Where did those, on top of obviously finances, where did that scarcity-based mindset also start to show up for you if you look backwards?
Yeah, my first year of marriage, my wife said, was our hardest year. Because as soon as I became the provider, and we moved in together after getting married, it's like I went from being this romantic, fun person to being a very serious, work all the time. I've got to provide, and I don't know if I'm going to provide enough. And so that scarcity meant that I'm like so strict about our budgeting. She's a teacher. She's spending money on the classroom. I'm like, no. You don't spend money. You're supposed to make money. And I was like counting every penny, and it was just exhausting for her because we argued all the time. So that's how it showed up in the relationship, and at that time, I was, if there was free food, I would eat it. But most of the time, free food's pizza and stuff like that. I'm like, well, it's free.
Yep.
Right. Or it's like they're trying to get me to do business with them. They're taking me out, feed me creme brulee. I'm just like unconscious, and I'm, oh, it's free, but it's hurting me health-wise. So that's the health side. That's the relationship. And what was the third category?
When you think of career, like just...
Oh, yeah. Like I had an assistant, but I remember every time I would pay her, I'd think about that's money that could have went into my bank account. And, it was just so limiting because you can't shrink your way to wealth. And I was limiting my growth because I was trying to save so much money at the expense of production, at the expense of value, at the expense of everything. And I couldn't be present. That was the real thing. Like if we're in church, I'm thinking about business 24/7. If we took, like even when my son was 1, we went on this vacation to Southern California, and like I was counting every dollar we spent and thinking about every dollar I wasn't making because I hadn't built infrastructure. I didn't have a team. I was very immature mentally. And I was being taught in the world of finance that I was doing the right things by the people that were teaching me. Now, not Nancy, who I ran into later, but it was all about scrimp, save, sacrifice, defer, delay. You look at so many of these so-called gurus, and they're talking about, you cut up the credit cards, you never spend any money, you only buy used, and wealthy people do that. And it's like, it's all this like promulgation that comes from scarcity. It's all very limited, and it's a very finite game. There's only so much you can save, and it's selfish because you're just thinking, like I was thinking about my goals and what I could do. I wasn't thinking about expansion and service and impact, because that actually would have mean I parted with my money for a minute.
It's great. It's so good to as you sit there, and listeners, I want you to sit into that phrase that just came off of Garrett's tongue so easily. It was shrink your way to wealth. And definition of wealth, multitude of different things. Again, we're not just talking money here, but like wealth in health, wealth in relationships, wealth in faith, wealth in finances, wealth in career, wealth in impact, influence, legacy, long-term impact. What does that actually look like? And you can't shrink your way there. And I think for me, even in my journey, shedding that scarcity-based mindset was so critical. I still go back to sleeping on couches and not having enough during my college years. And I think and I love my family. I love my parents. My parents provided more than I ever could, and from a lifestyle. But that was something that I learned from them, was a scarcity-based mentality of like, here's the budget, here's where we have to stay to. We can't dream bigger than this. We can't do bigger than this, is because this is just what we've been given. And it hasn't been until I've been able to shake that to know, no, we serve a abundant, omnipresent, exponential growth God that has put a calling on us that is so much bigger than anything we can see. And if we're just willing to be obedient and walk in faith and step into what we're called to passionately and obediently, my gosh, he is going to open doors. He is going to open the floodgates. And it comes back to the truth where it says the harvest is plenty, but the hands are few. And there's very few hands, not that are willing to work, but that are willing to be obedient. And I think that's the piece that comes back to just a critical onset.
You don't get fit with a light lift, and you look at the parable of the talents, right? And it's like, what happens to the person that buries it?
It takes it.
They're the slothful servant, and it gets taken from them. And then the one that multiplies it is given more. And so that's the ultimate parable to look at exactly what we're talking about here, is to be a steward of something. And there's 3 factors that usually really harm people with a vision. And there's nothing like a small mind to kill a big vision. The first factor is time. People lie and say, I don't have the time. Now, first off, they're only talking about themselves. And it means if they say they don't have the time, they're not being willing to receive support from other people, and they're trying to do too much on their own. The second thing is they say they don't have the money. Look, if you have a compelling vision and you commit to it fully, the money will show up. And then the third thing is they say they don't have the ability. But this is the secret, or this is like the magic, is you create a vision beyond your current capability and you rally other people to support you. And what happens is you grow into that vision because you're the steward. Just like when you're lifting weights, you grow, you get stronger. And the problem is someone will see someone in the gym that's crushing it, and it's their first day in there, and they're thinking they can never get there because they don't take the first step. And then they opt out because of embarrassment, shame, guilt, all forms of scarcity. And so part of what we have to shift is, instead of thinking about how much money can I save and set aside, you think about the first thing you do is you grow yourself. So you put the money inward, and then you grow your skills, and then you pour into other people's skills by investing in them, and then the money follows. When people skip those first 2 steps, money feels scarce, money feels hard, money feels evasive. And the reality is because they haven't prepared themselves for it.
It's so good, like what you're saying, and even as you're talking, it's literally lighting up synapses in my brain from conversations I've had in other rooms where I sit in the rooms of the executives, the entrepreneurs, the business owners, putting on these business workshops or these health workshops, talking about, again, how do they, I call it steward your body like you steward your business, or run your body like you run your business, the same level of intentionality, the same level of consistency, the same level of KPIs, data-driven components that ultimately determine this. And the things I hear all the time is, I don't have the time, I don't have the money, and ultimately I have failed at it before. So it's those three things that you just mentioned.
And people tell me that all the time with their money. I just don't have the time to figure it out. I'm like, okay, you do, because you're paying 10 times more by not figuring it out.
Yeah.
And the good news is we only need to know about 20% of what we think we need to know about money. The other 80% is a distraction. I know very little about the stock market or options trading, tax liens. I know very little about those because they're not part of my investor DNA. Like, what I know a lot about are books, because I've written 10 of them. Mm-hmm. What I know a lot about is the businesses that I create. And my vision's big enough I don't have to distract my money in other places, because I'm pouring it into my team. I'm pouring it into myself. I'm pouring it into my customers. And that's taking me for the ride. But a lot of people are afraid of investing at that level because they have to be responsible.
Yep.
And that's the key for all freedom, is we have to be responsible. And we're going to make mistakes. That's just part of the process. But mistakes don't make you less lovable. They make you human. And they actually become the ingredients to help you solve problems and gain the strength that's required for the vision that you have. It wouldn't be a vision if it's something you could already achieve. That's a goal. A vision's beyond your current capability, but it compels you forward. So I like to think, what's a vision I could dedicate my life to?
Yep.
And that's like a divine calling, that then you find ways to be resourceful. So here's an example. My son, he had an auditory processing issue, and it really had him, have neurological issues, and it had him, really communicate when he was in 5th grade, and he was very quiet and very stressed and not really clear with his language. And so I got with my wife, and I was like, you're a researcher, and I'm working with half the people or functional medicine people and like, we're going to figure this out. You research, I'll find the money no matter what. It was $1 million to figure out. And we have our son at 20 years old, fully functional and healthy. We didn't say we didn't know. We just said we will be, however, resourceful. So we didn't say we can't afford it. We'll say, what would it take to afford it? We didn't say we didn't know. We'd say, who might know? And we just got in the conversations, and we were inquisitive. And there was just 2 people that made all the difference. We found out the Mind's Eye Institute in Chicago. Then we found out this place called Brain Camp in Boston. It was $250,000 for Brain Camp. But every time he went, it was like more of my son showed up. And so I didn't have the answers. It wasn't my area of expertise. So when people say, well, I don't know, they start to diminish the possibility. And if instead they say, what would it take? And they just get in conversations. Like, I didn't know how to make a New York Times bestselling book, but by declaring it and calling my shot, people rallied around and helped me get there, right? And so that's part of it. Is I think people are afraid to call their shot. People are afraid that what if they fail? And I think this is what's cool about my marriage is my wife's cool if I'm like, hey, I want to do a comedy special and get it on a streaming service. She's like, cool. Now, if I don't get it there, I know she's going to be like, that was a cool adventure. Now we got it there. It was one of the most magical things I've ever done. But I just spoke into existence living in Salt Lake City. Like, none of it seems probable that I would have Barry Katz discover me, who managed Chappelle at one time, and Louis C.K. and all these guys, and that we'd get it on Amazon Prime. But it was just like, I just got resourceful because I was committed. And most people aren't committed, they're interested.
That's good. Yeah.
And look, if someone told me, like, if I call my wife right now and I said, hey, babe, I just want to let you know I'm 90% committed to this relationship, she'd kick my ass, right? We're either committed or we're not. But it's scarcity that kills our commitments. And it has us believe that we have to have an out. This is why sometimes in relationships, people are scarce. Like, it was hard for me to give my wife my full love and be fully open to her, because she knows me better than anyone. What if she didn't reciprocate? Does that mean I'm not lovable? That's scarcity, right? And so people hold back to be safe. And people have money stories like this, Justin, where they're like, they've been telling the same story for so long, so people identify them by the story, and it lets them off the hook. And so here's an example.
I was going to say, I was just going to say, give that example for the listeners, because I receive what you're saying, and I think your story is going to now bring that to life inside of me. But listeners, like, I want you to, like, whatever you just heard, maybe rewind 10 seconds, listen to that statement again. Maybe you can start with that statement again and then go into a story, because I want this seed to land and plant.
I think it's really important that I say this as context. What I'm about to say, I have only love for, and there's no judgment in this, because we all have certain layers of this. Okay. So I've been doing this for 27 years as of this month.
Oh, wow.
And I've met with so many people and heard so many of their money stories.
Yep.
And when I meet with them, we're in a place where I'm asking about what they want. And the first thing they usually tell me is what they don't want.
Yep.
That's not what they want. I'm like, I don't want debt. Oh, okay. So you got it. Like, then they'll say, I don't need a nice car. Now the first thing it tells me is they want one. Because if they didn't, they would never tell me about it.
And the other thing about that too is that your brain cannot tell the difference between a positive and a negative.
Exactly.
So the moment that you say you don't want something, it's why the brain is so easy to tell us what we don't want, because it actually knows, oh, I can get that very easy. I can succeed there. If I don't want to stand up out of this chair, okay, great. I'm going to stay seated.
Yeah.
Don't think of a pink elephant. What do we all think about?
Pink elephant.
And so we cannot tell the difference between a positive and a negative, but the negative is so much easier to find, which is why negative thoughts come so much quicker.
And a lot of it, like highly successful entrepreneurs even have trouble with this, because there's an identity.
Yep.
Like that we are supposed to know it all.
Yes.
And that we're not supposed to make mistakes, and people rely on us. And,
Yes.
And so that identity, when it starts to crack because of a cash flow issue, or because a growth issue, or because just people not enjoying what they do anymore, but identifying that that's who they are.
Yep.
And so these money stories are there, we think, to protect us, but they prevent us from prosperity. And the first layer is what we share. People say it unknowingly, it's unconscious at this point. But the story I'm really wanting to hear from them, and I want to create a safe space for people that say this, is like, what are you telling yourself that you've never spoke out loud? So the first problem we have here is what I call the productivity conundrum. It's what I experienced in my own marriage. I got married, and now I feel this deep responsibility to provide. And so when things aren't going exactly according to plan, because that's not how business works, I would then work harder and speak less. I'm in my head, and my wife's going, what's happening with him? She can feel it. She knows the energy. And I'm not sharing because I don't want her to be afraid of my thoughts, because she wants safety and stability. And in my pursuit of it, I actually remove safety and stability, trying to protect these stories in my own head, right? I'm not good enough. Can I do that? Whatever those like little thoughts are. So as soon as we can speak the things that we can't share, that we won't share, as soon as we speak it out loud, it loses its power.
Yep.
And it's like that vulnerability is tough, but if we could speak that, like, I feel embarrassed that I didn't sell my company for more. I had a much bigger offer, and I took a smaller offer because I thought I was being a good business partner. Mm-hmm. And the reality was, I got a third of what I would have gotten. Mm-hmm. And I'm in the business. I would never let a client go through that, but I just made mistakes, and I judged myself on that, leading to part of my health crisis in 2023.
Yeah.
But as soon as I can say it out loud, it's not holding me down anymore, and I can speak to a peer or a mentor, and I could work through it. And as soon as I share that, then what starts to show up is the sludge in the basement, what I call you can't share. The stuff that is stuck in the body, the emotions that come maybe ancestrally or from childhood that you don't know why you continually sabotage, but because it reminds you of something that you promised never to experience as a kid, so you start to withdraw or you start to accelerate, but you never have presence. And so just by saying these things out loud, they lose their power.
So good. And as I sit into this, I hear a lot of like the connection of what I call the 6Ds, which is the enemy's way in which he kind of takes us away and kills the calling that's on our life. So the first thing he'll do is distract. He'll distract you from what's purposeful. He'll give you something that's a good opportunity instead of a God opportunity. And he'll start to just bring you in. So your productivity conundrum.
And people are so bad at discerning opportunity from distraction.
Yes. Yep. And so all of a sudden, because you're distracted consistently, it then goes and disconnects you from people, disconnects you from God, disconnects you from hearing the voice, disconnects you from having that level of discernment you talked about. Because when you're disconnected, that's when he can start to divide you and divide you from the people that you need to be with, from your loved one, to your spouse, to your kids, to your family, to your coworkers, to your mentors, to those people that are there. And at that point, it discourages you. You feel like you're alone. You feel like you are just lost in this. You feel like you can't actually get to where you need to be. And then it disqualifies you. It's like, oh, this maybe wasn't my calling. Man, this maybe wasn't what I was supposed to do. Man, this isn't actually where I was supposed to be. Now I'm just in a big depression, and it's that point that you start to become destroyed. Like you, the physical body, the physical temple, the physical vessel vehicle that you're supposed to carry out that call starts to get destroyed. And so tell us, I'd love to dive deeper into the story of where you actually noticed that you kind of went through that cycle and you found yourself on that side of burnout, that kind of disintegration of your health that you were actually finding yourself in.
But I think the way that like God works is when I have, it's like writing's like an antenna to God, is what Tarantino of all people said.
Yep.
And when I write, sometimes I'm writing and it's just flowing through me.
Yeah.
And so I write Money Unmasked, and it says there's two forms of scarcity. People that play not to lose, that's the obvious scarcity.
Yep.
Right? The miser that plays the game called preservation, or the conservative that plays the game called accumulation, but it's all about what they can eliminate, reduce, delay, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
But then there's the more subtle, destructive form of scarcity, playing to win. So hear me out on this, because most entrepreneurs go, no, play to win is the way. The problem with play to win is it's always about the future, never about the present.
Wow.
And so we get in the striver mode of status or the high roller mode of opportunity. And it's always, this is temporary. I'll be better on the other side. Once this is over, then I'll be back.
So
I'll
good.
take care of my health later. All this, it's more, bigger, better, faster, and more is insatiable. Because,
So good.
And so my philosophy, and so look, I write Money Unmasked, and I'm like, wait, I'm playing not to lose with this licensing deal that's 7 figures. Because if I speak my truth, I lose that 7 figures. And then I'm like, in this other partnership, I'm playing to win because he says we're family, even though we're not truly family, and I take care of family. And so I'm playing to win by working extra hard to take care of someone that's not doing their part. And so I write the book, and then I'm like, oh my God, I'm right here in both these. So I go, all right, I'm going to cut this licensing deal off. And I'm going to lose the 7 figures to gain perspective and to create anew. I'm going to unwind this. It was extraordinarily difficult, but I was like, I have to, it's required for me to be loving and present and not create entitlement and enable and have an unfair system. And so I'm like, damn, why'd I write this book? I got to live it. But the key is what I call win then play. When you're living your God-given purpose, you've already won.
It's great.
The win is in the work.
It's great.
The win is in the journey. The win is in the process. Yep. It's in being present.
Yep.
Right? And when we're present and we know God, we're not worried about the future reliving the past. We're in the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. I love that. I literally got goosebumps as you said that, because like the moment that people, I always hear, you're born twice, right? It's first when you're actually born, and then again when you figure out why.
Yeah.
And when you realize that we were created for a purpose, we were created for a mission, we were created to go and actually help people, serve people, and there's a unique calling on each and every one of our lives, and dependent on whether we actually want to be obedient to that or whether we don't is the exact reason whether we live in a scarcity or abundance-based mindset.
Yeah.
Because if we are on service, on mission from God, who is ever-present, omniscient, omnipresent, and ultimately abundant and exponentially giving.
And we're of that.
And we are of that.
We are of that.
Then everything that you do, not saying it's going to be easy, but is going to be built so that there is greatness down the road.
Right. So when I'm dealing with my kidney disease, I have insomnia at the time.
Yeah.
And so I'm awake at night with my thoughts.
Love that. That's a good place to be.
I'm like,
yikes.
Am I going to live? Am I going to kidney transplant? It's like, what's going on here?
Don't be with your thoughts at night.
And I'm just, one day I didn't sleep for 3.5 days, and my wife just came and held me because she's like, you're mentally not well right now. I'm like, I know, and I know this isn't real. I know this is just, I haven't slept. And then she could calm me down. And then fortunately, we're just resourceful. She's like, you need to meet this woman, Deborah. I think she can help. She did a biofeedback session on me. And within a week, I was sleeping.
Wow.
And she kept saying, you got this. It's fine. She's like, these are the foods you eat. Don't eat anything but that. Eat when you're hungry. Eat more frequently. Your cortisol levels are too high. Stop intermittent fasting for what we're dealing with right now. You need to feed the body. And then I was like, I need to write to release the stress, and I need to do somatic therapy to get rid of these memories in my body. And it's still hard to believe when I get my blood work where I'm at today, right? Because most people, that's like a sentence. Like, yep, you've got kidney disease.
Yep. Moment of, I think there's people out there right now that as they hear that sentence, there's a sentence that's been put on them. Yep, you're obese. Yep, you got diabetes. Yep, you're just going to be exhausted forever. This is just what you're supposed to be. Yep, you know what? This is what 55, this is what 60, this is what 40 looks like. And I want you to listen and hear this, listeners, that your sentence, that you were created to heal, you were created to thrive, but it requires you to choose something different.
That's what it is.
100%.
Because now I go, what is, like, obviously I think wealth is health theoretically, but to experience it.
Yes.
Then I'm like, look, I'm not here just to talk about wealth. Wealth only matters if you have good life design and live wealthy, and if you have energy.
Yep.
If you don't have that trifecta, you don't have wealth. You might be rich.
Yep.
But you might not have the things that really matter. And I mean, you've heard the saying, if you have your health, you have 1,000 dreams, and without, you have but one.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that was a difficult time, but it was hard because I had to know my value.
Yep.
And stand for that value.
It's great.
And that's hard to do in relationships sometimes.
Big time.
Right?
Yep.
Because
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's very hard to stand for it because oftentimes the enemy again will then start to trick you and say, oh, well, I'm not worth it. This isn't something that's available to me. This is something that I can't have, because we're stuck in that scarcity-based thinking, which I love the way that you put that. It's either you're playing not to lose or you're playing to win. Yeah. And when you only see those two options, you forget that there's a third that doesn't require either.
And look, I mean, but yeah, I'm going to share this. But the bottom line is we are lied to that we have to sacrifice. And if it's our dream and our God-given purpose, there is no sacrifice. The sacrifice already happened for us.
So good.
So this is, the Sacred Heart of Christ, and it's God's finger touching my forehead. And it's to remind me that you can face any of your pain with love and compassion. On the other side is consciousness and connection. And so this notion that people give speeches, oh, I've sacrificed so much. No, you didn't. You made choices. And those choices were good choices.
Yeah.
It wasn't sacrifice if you designed the game and lived in accordance and were congruent. And I think that so many people think to be wealthy, you have to sacrifice. Now, but here's the deal. I have kids. There's stats that say you spend up to 93% of the time with your kids while they live with you. And so this whole stupid notion of retirement is work so hard so you could save money early on, so that now when you're 65 and older and your kids are out of the house and have their own family, you can now spend time with them when they learn to sacrifice from you, so they don't have time to spend with you because they learn to work 12 to 16 hours a day. They can't go take a trip because that's the habit that we formed. And there's so many books out there that try to get people to be misers. The Millionaire Next Door, The Wealthy Bar, I mean, I could just go down the list. Millionaire Baby Steps, all these books neglect lifestyle, they neglect health, they neglect quality of life, and they're not about service, they're about selfishness and sacrifice. Me, me, me. How much money someone has in their retirement account has nothing to do with serving others. Yet it's the thing that they think they have to rob their service and their investment in themselves, because if they don't, they're misbehaving and they get that guilt and shame around it. I have no money in a retirement account. Now I have a lot, so I started over basically in 2024. I have 6 figures a month coming in recurring revenue. I knew how to do it faster this time because it's about a mission of how do I liberate entrepreneurs to become financially independent? How do I leverage AI tools so that the ultra wealthy tools now become available to the masses? How do I make, I have what I will dedicate the rest of my life to until I die. I'm not going to retire. I'm just going to enjoy trips along the way. I'm going to live my life that I don't want to retire from it or have to retire from it. And it's a completely different methodology and model.
It's beautiful just how you articulate it. And I wrote this down as you were talking about, and you kind of touched on it, you kind of got into it, but what is your burn? Like, what's the burn inside? Like, what fuels you to step into that? Like, we started to see, like, you get into flow there for a second where you were like just starting to go, like, there was something that was tripped, and every single one of us has that. What is that for you? What is that thing that burns you and fuels you to continue to keep you going in this direction, to be the continual disruptor that thinks different, that articulates things different, that spurs people to think differently?
I think that we have all of the solutions to every problem that we face on earth locked within people. And if it's not unlocked because they're afraid of money, then everyone loses. And when I get to watch someone open up, like I have someone that their son went to prison and they were at a low moment and they called me and we talked and they cried and I just let them know I loved them. They're a client. And then he said, "You're the only man I've ever trusted." That has nothing to do with money. It has to do with humanity.
Yeah.
And guess what? When someone, like, I can make money doing real estate. I don't like it because no tenant ever cared. Like, because everybody does the work. I just provide the money. But when I write a book, my buddy Adam, been friends with him forever. He's like, "Dude, Money Unmasked unlocked me." Gave me a hug. That shit is so meaningful that I can, and like, it's so fun. I'll be at an airport with my sons and someone recognizes me and they come up and talk to me about my book. It's like, I'm showing my kids, like, this is the impact that you can have if you choose to do something. Like, when I sold the company and I was doing comedy, it was a lot of fun. And then I just had like a break. I was just unfulfilled and bored during that 3 months. Kind of lost, like not sure what to do. It wasn't fulfilling. But I like to write. I like to speak. I like to meet fascinating people. I like to elevate what I'm up to because I'm inspired by others and I like to inspire other people. So I like to be up to something. Because if I'm not, I'm a slothful steward. And all it does is make me feel more lethargic, more disconnected, and more caught up in the world. Like, what am I going to do? Watch TV and numb out? What am I going to do? Like, it's just not fun.
Yeah. Very good. You talk about this life by design, and obviously people who've tuned into the Own It show many a times, we talk about life by design all the time. Is how do you architect what it is you're doing? You can't buy your health, you have to build it.
Right.
You can't buy your deep relationships, you have to build it. You can't buy a deep faith, you have to build it. It's all this purpose of building and designing what it is that you're actually looking for. And so as you talk about this life by design, how have you designed your life? What does your life by design structure look like so that you've been able to realize this sense of abundance and live in it continuously?
Like, I think my life really changed when my wife said, "Let's go to Italy for the summer."
How
I
long
was
ago
like-
was that?
She said that in 2015, and I was like, "Okay, I got a business." And I was like, it confronted my scarcity because I'm like, oh, my great grandfather didn't even go around Italy. He went to his little town, then came to America. I'm just going to go play there for a summer. That was my first thought. And I was like, how am I going to do this with the business? But I was like, all right, that's the question. What would it take? And so I met with my team. We built an 18-month plan. And after 18 months, we went to Italy for the summer. And the first 2.5 weeks were a little gnarly. I saw the Slack sales channel declining, and they figured it out without me. And after 2.5 weeks, I finally relaxed. And I finally just like hung out, played cards. We walked. Italy, you're having long dinners. You're taking day tours. It was just like I was with my kids every day. We're playing in the pool. Friends are coming to visit. And I was like, all right, I have a lot of downtime because I wake up earlier than everybody else. And so I was like, what do I want life to be? That's when I decided to do comedy as a hobby. So I was like, I think that entrepreneurs are actually artists stuck in their business clothing.
It's great.
So I was like, how could I have this canvas to express value in unique ways that compel me and that show my kids, like, you can just invent things.
Yeah.
Like my wife once said on camera, yeah, Garrett became an entrepreneur because there was no job there for him. He had all these offers, but none of them fit him, so he just created his own thing. And my son was 7 at the time. He goes, what do you mean, create his own thing? She's like, well, he's an entrepreneur. He just invented it. He goes, I want to be an entrepreneur. At 7, right? And my 9-year-old at the time said, my dad's just like me. When I play video games and I die, I just go again. I just keep going and I go, and I'm just like my dad. And I was like, and then my youngest said, my dad doesn't work too much, but he doesn't work not too much. And it's like, those moments are so fulfilling. And when I'm writing, I wrote a play on the book Money Unmasked. My son helped me memorize it. My youngest opened for me when I did my comedy special. I was like, that's wealth to me. And so I just consistently have on every calendar, it says, ask better questions, have a better life. And then I just meet with my assistant. I go, does this calendar tell the story that we want to tell of living? Are we doing the things that we want to do with the people that we want to do them with? Are we making the kind of impact that we want? And if not, what do we have to do? Because I just look at the calendar as a book of my life. And so that's what life design is. It's my wife and I on this trip talking about things we want to do as a family. And we always have a trip on the book so we can look forward to it, right? If I'm gone more than 4 nights in a month, I take a day off, during the week. Like, we just have certain standards. Like, the computer stays in my office. It never leaves the office, the phone gets put down at a certain point. There's just things that we create as rules that create more fulfillment. And yeah, so life design is just a lot of questions and a lot of refinement.
It's beautiful. We talk about the boundaries create freedom. And when you look at somebody's calendar, I'll tell you their priorities. I'll tell you
Totally.
what it is that they actually value. I'll tell you what their mindset actually is. You can tell so much by what somebody puts in their day based upon their state of mind, their state of being, and what they're actually thinking about. And I think that's so beautiful. I mean, as you walk through our door this morning, you just flew here from New York City, and you've got a cooler full of your food, and you pack that. You are proactive and thinking about it. And I've given frameworks after framework after framework for traveling, because for somebody who's on the road 140 days a year, who's speaking, who's running workshops, who's on book tours, podcasts, etc., I can't afford not to have a framework for traveling. Like, I have to know how to change time zones seamlessly without it having stress on my body. I have to have a structure so that I can train accordingly and have my quiet time and be in my sauna and have the place where I can be creative. I have to make sure that I have my food with me in order to fuel me properly so I can go and pour out the way that I'm needing to. And to do all of those things take, one, proactivity, but two, also finances. It takes resources to be able to do it. And so talk a little bit about...
People have the resources in a 401k.
Amen.
They get, there's unhealthy people with plenty of money. Only 34% of millionaires feel wealthy today. So they have this money locked away for one day, someday, that they'll probably spend in the hospital. And so so first off, I don't have a budget for health. Now, I didn't have a budget for health after I cut off a lot of income too.
Yeah.
I tapped into savings. I was like, fine, it's worth it. Whatever it takes, because...
Was it because of your experience of having kidney disease that brought you to that level of mindset, or was it before? Was it prior to that?
Before. I remember someone told me about this health retreat, and I took my wife for a week. She thought it was like a spa when we got there. It was like they're, pooping in boxes. They're testing everything you can imagine. She's like, there was one massage, and she's like, not a spa. Fair. But
the whole bait and switch.
I remember she had mercury fillings, and I was like, hey, mercury fillings are pretty bad. Like, I'm reading about it. She read about it. I'm like, let's go see this biodentist while we're here. And that biodentist was like, well, you could do this over time, and you might be able to get it done cheaper. And I was like, we're going to do it. I don't know if I just look like, when I'm, back then, probably just like hair's down, I look homeless or something. But I just never have a budget for that. I'm like, I don't let insurance dictate my health. If insurance covers something, great, but most stuff I do, insurance doesn't cover.
Yeah.
Right? So I just look at it as an investment. It's a penny of prevention for a pound of, productivity. And I don't know how I adopted that very early. And so that's just been part of our mantra as a family. And, like, my wife's gotten her health back. My oldest, just seeing where he's at, working out with him, at least 3 days a week. I do some workouts on my own, but it's just cool watching him. And dude, both my kids are eating macros exactly right now. They're doing, my 17-year-old is shredded right now. We're Project Six Pack is the Gunderson boys, all three of us, The oldest isn't quite there, but it's because he doesn't measure his meat. He just eats so much. I'm like, bro, you gotta But I'm like, they're eating healthy. They're not eating fast food. But monkey see, monkey do, man. They're watching me do it. I took my son to a writing workshop, and we were the only two in this gym. So I took my shirt off. I had ab veins, and I was shredded, and he was just like, and then I just watched what he did. He started going like, how'd you do that? I'm like, let's get you this coach. He's like, that's expensive. I'm like, if you'll comply 100%, I'll pay for 3 months, as long as you comply. And so he is. Like, while we're traveling, he's making his own food. My wife's overheard him talking to his friends. You want to go to college? I'm going to eat really close to how I'm eating right now. And so it's just, I've seen what happened when I've been to funerals with family members, how unhealthy they are. cousins my own age that don't look good. So I'm like, I'm just willing to spend that money.
Yeah.
It's not spending, it's investing.
Yeah.
Right.
I often say people either spend money on their health or they invest in their health. And even for a lot of listeners out there, you're like, oh, well, I've spent money on my health. Yeah, you spent money for a Peloton that acts as a ironing board. You have a treadmill that sits in there as a thing that stacks boxes. You've got a nutritionist that basically was there to stroke your ego and make you feel good. So you're spending money there, or does it have a purpose? Does it have an intention? Is it something that's actually going to create a change that helps you live differently, that's going to change your heart set, your mindset, and ultimately the physical set of how you show up in the decisions you make daily? Are you using it truly as Romans 12:1 and 2 says, this is your true and proper worship? Are you truly transforming your mind, which is actually your heart, so that you can be transformed? Are you renewing the heart and mind so that you can realize that transformation? Because how we live, the decisions we make, the habits we make, the behaviors we make ultimately determine if that's true and proper worship, that you can go and then receive the abundance and the things that are there for you. Because if you have to do the call that's on your life, it's going to require capacity in order to get there. And without capacity, you can't do anything.
Well, candidly, I know what my mind sounds like when I'm not looking and
When you're
feeling
not
great.
well.
Because it's
great.
like, why did you eat this way?
Yep.
Like, it's like, it's a negative tape. The scarcity comes in. But if I take care of this, it's hard, easy versus easy, hard.
Yes.
It's easy to not do it and life gets harder.
Yep.
Or sometimes, I always forget how hard the cold plunge is until I get in it. And it's nice that I only think about it while I'm in it.
Yep.
And then I hang from a bar that gets really hard at the end. And then I jump on a rebounder and hold my breath as long as I can to boost the nitric oxide. And it's like, my mind's going nuts. I'm like, it's not that long. And then the rest of the day is easier.
Yeah.
And I say my mantras of being a fit, energetic machine. And I'm just, I feel better. Like, I know it's helping my brain. I understand the consequences. I'm living consciously that way. And when I forgot about it, I paid the price.
Yeah. For somebody listening out there right now who is like, man, I just feel like all day you've been talking to me. I feel like this is something that has just resonated with me, something that's blessed me, something that's challenged me, something that's making me question a lot of my actions, but I don't know what to do first. I don't know where to go. I don't know how to take myself from this concept of playing not to lose or playing to win that's left me in this scarcity state that I'm noticing in my relationships, that I'm noticing in my finances, that I'm noticing in my business, that I'm noticing in my health. Where do I start to go and step into first without just reading Money Unmasked or Killing Sacred Cows immediately? Obviously, everybody go get the books, look up Garrett Gunderson. He's an absolute legend in how he's operating, how he's influencing and impacting people. But what would you say to people who are looking for, where do they go first?
Well, let me give them a gift. Let me give them the financial health assessment. They can just DM me and just put own it.
Great.
And if you put own it in a DM on Garrett B. Gunderson, I'll give you the financial health assessment.
On Instagram.
On Instagram, yeah.
Yep.
For safety and security and money investing. So now they have a checklist to create awareness. You'll just go through, yes, that's handled, no, it's not, I'm not sure. And now you have at least an initial map. The second thing is pay yourself first. So just simply set up a separate account wherever you're currently banking and then start automating savings into that separate account. Now here's the magic. There's 4 places where most people can find money they're unknowingly leaking. Number 1 is tax, especially entrepreneurs. 93% of them are overpaying tax. And there's a new tax bill that should mean that they save even more tax if they know what they're doing. Number 2 is interest. A lot of people could restructure loans. They could reallocate funds that are underperforming to pay off higher interest rate loans, or they could renegotiate interest rates. The third thing is investments. There's a lot of hidden fees, admin fees, legal fees, expense ratios, 12E1 fees, that if they reduce those, they'll have so much more money in the future without having to fuel more into it. And then insurance. A lot of people just have bad insurance design. They insure inconsequential things, and they should only insure catastrophic things and redesign their policies so the more money stays in their pocket. That should be 10% of their income by doing that. And so if they just, I do daily doses on Instagram to give some of those insights. I'll even throw in my tax navigator for those people. So they get the financial assessments and the tax navigator. It's just a checklist. And now they have awareness. Now they know what to do. And those are just gifts.
It's beautiful. Guys, it's amazing when you start to actually be able to create change in yourself. I think a lot of us, as Garrett said above, are not actually committed to realizing change, but we're interested. It's like, oh, you know what? I'm interested in feeling this. I'm interested in getting this way. And as I've talked about here many a times, is as great as it is that commitments you make compound when consistency is present, you have to also realize in the negative side of that is compromises also compound when you do that consistently. And so you can either find yourself exponentially growing or exponentially decaying over the course of time. And the hard part about that is probably the first year, year and a half, 2 years. I won't put a timeline on it, but the first amount of time always seems small in either direction. And it's only once things start to catch wind, start to catch fire, start to move forward, that you start to realize things in an exponential way, which is how we were designed. And so, Garrett.
Patience and persistence are the two key things.
Yeah.
But also the proper framework with patience and persistence. Because some bad framework is like, I'm just going to wait for 30 years for this to pay off. I'm like, no, let's create cash flow from your assets so that you have enough income coming in from those assets to cover your expenses. Now, every active dollar can build your mission. It could grow what you're up to without any fear.
So good. Garrett, I wanted to ask you one more story, and I think this is going to bring out a lot of insight in people as just who you are, the man you are. Because you obviously had a vision of what you were going to do, how you were going to do it, because you had a business and you had a bunch of business partners that you were in, and that you ultimately had created a life of where you were going. And something happened to those business partners at the time that ultimately could have been a very large tipping point for you.
Right.
And I'd love you to tell the story, because I think there's also listeners out there that find themselves in situations where they're the victim and they find themselves in a place where I can't do these things because, or I'm stuck in this place because. But I want them to hear your story and resonate so heavily. If it wasn't, hey, the kidney disease that you ultimately created for yourself, but also then realize that your body heals, and if you put it in the right environment, it's able to do so. If you live a life by design, it's able to get you to a certain place. But what about the things that are out of your control?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Man, this is wild because back in June of 2006, I was supposed to speak at this event, and we had a little Lancer private plane. And I was just like, man, I'm tired. And so Ray, one of my partners, is like, I'll go. I was like, cool. Yeah, that's good. I'm going to stay home. And then Les, our other partner, is like, I'll go with him. But he didn't tell me till the morning of. He just texted me because we had a radio show. And then the next day, like, I wake up to a phone call at like 6 a.m. on our landline, which I don't know why we still have a landline. My wife was like, everything melts down. We have a landline. And it was my other partner, Mike. He's like, hey, man, Ray and Les left the event last night, and nobody's heard from him. So I turned the TV on, and there was breaking news that a plane crashed in Utah Lake. So my two 35-year-old partners died in that crash. And at first I was like, well, I'm going to do whatever I can to keep all 42 employees in all 3 offices, and I'll just work harder. So my son was asleep when I left for work. And even by the time I got home, because it was just nonstop, like wasn't available for my wife. And my first day off was Thanksgiving. We drove down 2 hours to where my family lived, and my wife had to drive because I was barely functioning. And halfway through the drive, we hadn't even said a word, and she broke the silence by saying, "You're a pretty extraordinary businessman." And she glanced at my son and looked at me, and she's like, "But just an ordinary husband and father." And so what I realized is, like, I was living my life for these 2 dead guys. They wouldn't want me to do that. I was sacrificing family and everything. My own health. I gained 25 pounds during that time. Not muscle, just, like hot fudge sundaes from McDonald's type of weight. And I was like, it hit me hard. I was pretty speechless. So I just told my team I was going to start officing from home and have time with my family. And like that, thank God she said that, because it really changed our life and really changed our relationship, And yeah, I mean, I could have been like, oh, well, we lost partners and, it's not my fault. But I was just like, hey, what can I do now? And I had to go, well, what's my priority here? I thought it was like good to sacrifice for them, but they weren't even asking me to. They weren't around. My health, my family, everything was suffering.
I love that story because it kind of brings it full circle back to what you said before, is You've used the word sacrifice a lot. And oftentimes we place sacrifice on us as business owners, entrepreneurs, people who are creating, people who are serving, people who are leading in different areas. And it's like we have to sacrifice. But no, nobody ever asked you to sacrifice. Nobody ever asked you to fall on the sword. Nobody ever asked you to take 1,000 cuts so that somebody else could flourish. That's not true servanthood. And at the end of the day, we actually had the greatest sacrifice given for us. He died on a cross so that we could have salvation.
It's been done.
It's already over.
It's already over.
And so we are here simply to execute on a calling. And if we don't steward our temple well, if we don't steward our body well, if we don't look at what the gifts are around us and live in a life of stewardship, at the end of the day, it is all for naught. It doesn't matter what is actually happening around us. It doesn't matter what's actually going on. It's in that place that we have to get comfortable with actually saying, hey, you know what? The way I'm thinking is probably not the thing that's best for growth. The thing that I'm thinking is actually probably not what's best for stewardship. The thing that I'm thinking is probably a way that's flawed, that's keeping me stuck right where I am.
Look, sacrifice is the ultimate form of scarcity because people still believe in it. So they like let everybody off the hook. But I'm like, no, if I have a big vision and dream and I go for it, I just have to create the boundaries. I have to create the structure.
It's great.
I get to say, it's an abundant enough to have it all.
Yeah.
I can have an amazing marriage. I can be an amazing father and great at business. And part of it is I have to get past, and I had to get past it. I just have to be like, I'm going to pour into my team and let the team help with the vision.
Yeah.
I'm going to grow them and they'll grow this thing. I don't have to do it all.
Look after the people. Let the people look after the business.
Yeah.
So good. So good. Garrett, for somebody who lives their life in ownership, what would you say is your definition of ownership?
Yeah. We're victors instead of victims. We just take responsibility, regardless of the circumstance, learn from it, and find the love in it. Because it's, it's all there for us.
It's beautiful.
And that's probably these. Yeah. Victimhood is the way that will trap people from anything that they want.
It's great. I love it. So guys, as you go forward, there's been so many good things here, and I really encourage you to go and take Garrett up on his gift. His knowledge, his wisdom is incredible. It is an amazing blessing to me, but it's also going to be an amazing blessing to you. And so I encourage you, go to Garrett B. Gunderson on Instagram. I'll tag that down below in the show notes. And make sure when you DM him, you put in Own It, and he will send you the financial health calculator as well as the tax calculator so that you can be able to get both of those tools, both of those resources, gain wisdom, gain knowledge, gain awareness, gain understanding, in which you can then decide where you go next. You can decide what that next step looks like for you so that you can take yourself from where you are to where you desire to go. And ultimately, we know that it requires a little bit of change in thinking and process and system so that you can realize a life that is different. Because at the end of the day, scarcity is something that will drag you down. It will be like a ankle weight, something that you're standing in quicksand and you don't even know it. And before you know it, you try to take a step, you step into water and you sink to the bottom because ultimately you have found yourself playing to lose. Sorry, you find yourself playing not to lose.
Which is losing.
Which is losing at the end of the day. Or you find yourself so hard trying to play to win. And both of those are a form of scarcity. And we have to step in and realize that being interested is not enough. You have to choose to be committed. And that what vision is on your heart, what vision has been placed on you, not just because it's out of a desire of yours, but rather because it's your calling. And whatever your calling is ultimately somebody else's blessing, that they are waiting for you to make a different choice. They're waiting for you to step up and say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. This is where I'm going to go. This is what I'm going to start to lean into. That might be your family. That might be your kids. That might be your marriage. That might be your own health and your own body. It could be somebody that you have not met yet. But the moment that you decide to do something different is the moment that your life begins to change, because we know success is different. So own your different. And we'll see you guys next week.